Hi, and welcome to the GDR Objectified's first field trip. My work has taken me to Germany, and I thought I would try to do something a little bit different. I find myself today in the deepest reaches of Western Germany in Bonn, the city that was the capital of the Federal Republic of Germany, or what was then West Germany, from 1949 onward. Now, some of you are probably thinking this is a rather odd site to be doing something related to GDR from, but in fact, as the West German capital, Bonn was the site of a lot of interactions, both open and surreptitious, between East and West. The East German secret police, the Stasi, had a keen interest in goings-on in the higher echelons of West German politics and had managed to place their spies into many notable, important positions. The most notable of these was Günther Guillaume, who was Chancellor Willy Brandt's personal assistant. In 1974, Guillaume's involvement with the Stasi was revealed, and Brandt, the architect of a rapprochement of sorts between East and West, was forced to resign. I am standing in the Bonn district of Bad Godesberg. That's a little south of the center of the city. And it's a rather sleepy neighborhood. This is actually an adjective that you could well apply to most of Bonn. It's quite a lovely place, but not particularly exciting. And the reason that the capital was placed here is, well, in part because it's not really very exciting. Bonn had never assumed a particularly important role in the politics or the history of Germany, and so wasn't associated with any chapters that would bring any unwanted associations with it. The other issue was, of course, the geography. Bonn sits in the far west, as I've mentioned before, and in the event of a conflict between East and West, there was some thought given that the further the West German politicians could be away from the inner German border, the better. But the main reason, really, that Bonn got the nod over its main competitor, Frankfurt, was that the first West German Chancellor, Konrad Adenauer, was a local patriot. He was a native of neighboring Köln and adamant that Bonn should get the nod over Frankfurt. Now, there were good reasons why Frankfurt might have been chosen. Frankfurt was the home of the first German parliament in 1848 and therefore had very positive associations for many Germans, educated Germans at least. But in the final analysis, Adenauer reached into his bag of tricks and was able to seal the deal for Bonn, and so it was that in May 1949, Bonn became the first capital of the Federal Republic of Germany. Well, imagine my joy when heading towards my hotel just now, I ran into this. This would be a public phone booth of the 1980s vintage, just as I remember them from my initial trips. Of course, I believe there used to be a phone in the side ones I used. Anyway, what's perhaps a bit interesting about this, in the news right now, as I've mentioned before, is reports of the National Security Agency's work tapping into the cell phone of Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor. One of the reports had a brief story reporting how Helmut Kohl, Angie's predecessor as German Chancellor and her mentor in the Christian Democratic Party, he used to take all of his important phone calls in public phone booths, such as this one, because he was so paranoid that the Stasi, the East German secret police, had tapped his landline. It surprises me that in his mentoring of Angie, he didn't mention this trick, and Angie, as an Easterner, didn't consider the possibility of having her phone bugged. Probably she never expected that the Americans would do it, but there you go. At any rate, it was nice to run into this little relic of the past here on the streets of Bonn. Well, what have we here? In a case of what has to be very good timing, I see that one of the temporary exhibits at the House of History is the American Way, the USA in Germany. This morning I find myself on the Godesberger Allee, one of the main north-south road running from central Bonn out to the district of Bad Godesberg on its southern edge. The reason that I'm here is that during the time when Bonn was the capital of Germany, a number of countries held their diplomatic representatives along this street, and I've been told that that was the case for the GDR. One of the interesting things that I've noticed as I've walked this alley is that since many of the buildings along here were erected in the 1960s and 70s, there's an awful lot of prefabricated construction, sort of modernist style prefab construction that bears this eerie resemblance to the much maligned East German prefab high-rise building, or the Plattenbau. At any rate, the site of the old representation should be along here somewhere. Oh my goodness, be still my beating heart. So here's, speaking of the Plattenbau, this looks highly promising. Honestly, this is something you might find in Karl-Marx-Stadt, Dresden. Who knows? I'm going to explore a little bit. So here's the main entranceway. Going up, we see that this abandoned site has been nicely graffitied, and now its fence is being used to inform us that the Christmas circus is coming. How very helpful indeed. Well, sadly, this sign solves the mystery. This appears not to have been the site of the East German permanent representative to the Federal Republic, but rather one time the embassy of the Saudi Arabia, the Saudi leader. So, well, all I can say is he had very similar tastes to Khrushchev and the other East Bloc leaders. We will keep searching. Well, here it is. Slightly less spectacular. Godesberg Allee 18, currently the home to the German Society of Nutrition. This was the site where between 1974 and 1990, East Germany had its diplomatic representation to West Germany. This came about as a result of a rapprochement between the two states when West Germany elected Willy Brandt, Social Democrat, as its chancellor, and his so-called Ostpolitik, or East policy, saw relative normalizing of relations between the two states. As I mentioned earlier, it was a Stasi spy that managed to see Brandt out of office 4 years later, ironically the year that this building took up its duties. This would have been an important site for the East Germans. Central part of their foreign policy was getting diplomatic recognition, obviously from other countries. First and foremost, they wanted to be recognized by their West German brother, and this was a key goal. So from here, they would have been working on that. This site did not indicate that they had full diplomatic recognition. Rather, the German states traded what they called permanent representatives. So they were essentially represented in one another's countries. The lines of communication were open, but it was not official diplomatic recognition. The second thing that would have happened out of here, referencing back to the Guillaume affair, the Stasi had officers in here who would have run their many West German moles, spies out of here. So this was an important site for that type of activity. Third, the diplomats here would have been charged with realizing the goal of their general secretary, the Socialist Unity Party leader, the East German dictator Erich Honecker's long-held wish to have an official visit to West Germany. Honecker himself was born in the West, grew up here in a region called the Saarland, and ended up in East Germany only as a result of the outcome of World War II and his Soviet affiliation. So in 1987, this dream actually came through and true, and Honecker was welcomed by then Chancellor Helmut Kohl for an official visit, highly controversial in the West, and seen by Honecker as quite a coup. So this building has some stories to tell. this falls into the category of I don't believe it. At the start of this film, you'll recall that I told a little story about Helmut Kohl's practice of using public phone booths for his important calls out of paranoia over the Stasi. For that story, I used a 1980s era phone booth that was right here to illustrate my point. On my way back to my hotel today, I see that it has disappeared. This is remarkable. It's also possible that it might have stood over here. I can't remember exactly, but either way, it's gone. There is absolutely no trace of it. I can't help but think that the gods, or perhaps the spirit of Marx and Lenin, wanted it to be this way.